Well, what is going on, YouTube? Welcome back to A Therapeutic Edge. Hey, do me a favor. Subscribe. I'd love to have you here on a regular basis. And don't forget to hit that like button. It's down there somewhere. On the table in front of us today is a new budget-friendly knife. Recently, somebody said that they didn't like the phrase budget knife because it implied that they weren't good or whatever. But what I mean when I say that always is budget-friendly. This is a $26 knife, and it is a very, very well-made $26 knife. Sitivien has recently released a bunch of really cool stuff. I reviewed one. I got another one coming up. And you can find them on other channels as well. In a world where knives like Sitivien are going for 70 or 80, even higher dollars now, a $27 knife is a great thing to have available because it means that anybody can get a good knife. I love stuff like this. And this is a particularly cool one. I just love the way it looks. Let's never forget Tibbs rule number 9. Never go anywhere without a knife. So if your budget is $26 or if your budget is, $400, there's something for you and everything in between. So what is the ST-116? Well, it is a phenomenally big, comfortable, slicey knife in D2. It's G10 with steel liners. It is a liner lock, and as you can see, we're locked up at about 30%, which means there's plenty of life left. It has a very nice stamped steel deep carry clip, which is, the design is deep carry, but there's a little bit of knife sticking out the back. I love the shape of this thing, right? Very, very cool. Nice tall blade, good edge, right? It's not a razor blade, but the black wash is well done. All the black hardware is very cool. It has a black G10 backspacer. There's some texturing on the G10 back here, which, there we go, you can see that. It doesn't add a lot, but it does add some interest. And as I said, this is a big knife. You can use this enormous hole to spidey flick the thing open, and of course it's a flipper. So you can use the flipper tab, which works every single time. Let's check the detent. Yep. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being that you can't open the knife at all, and 1 being that it falls out when you do this, I would say this is probably a 4 or a 5. It's not a super stiff detent, but it is sufficient to keep the knife closed in most functions. A little bit of a flick, and you can get it to break loose. Oh, maybe it's a 6. It's a nice thick chunk of D2. And again, it's $26. You cannot go wrong at that price. You really can't. Do I have any other Sitiviens handy? I do. No, that is not. I guess I don't. That's odd. All right, well, anyway, let's do some other first, let's get the specs out of the way and do some other size comparisons. I'm a fan of this brand. I have the 110 and the 109 around here somewhere. Too many knives, not enough tabletop. There we go, my goodness. Here's another Sitivien. What I like about the company is that they're releasing stuff in a lot of different varieties and styles. There's a review of this coming up shortly. They make knives in 14C and in D2. That one and this one both happen to be in their D2. I've used these knives for all of my sort of standard cutting stuff. Seatbelt material, rubber tubing, rope, you name it. And their D2 holds an edge very, very well. I think this is a great pocket knife. And again, I'm going to say again 56 more times before this review is over. And also, anyway, so what do you get for your $26? Well, you get just about 3 1/4 inches of cutting on an equally 3 1/4 inch if you come to this spot on the scale, 3 1/4 inches of D2 steel. The grip area from behind the flipper tab is 3 1/4, which is not too bad. The knife itself is just 8 3/4 inches, right, overall. Because of the shape, right, it's got a lot of curve to it, which means it sits in the hand really, really well. It's reasonably thick this way, so it is relatively, even though it's shaped and it's got some built-in choils, it's still relatively neutral, but it allows for a really, really good grip. It's got a nice spot for your thumb. There's no jimping, but it does have a really great sort of curved area for your thumb right there. And of course, you can come forward if you're doing draw cuts. You are a little far away from the blade because of the size of the flipper back here, but it hasn't interfered with anything. I did some feather sticking with this just to try it out. It does a great job at that. But because the spine is not super sharp, I'm sorry, puppy. My dog's over there hacking something up. You really can't hit a Firestone with this too well. You could use the blade, but I don't recommend that. But in a pinch, you absolutely could. So you could use this to start fires if you wanted to. The closed length on the 116 here is 5 1/8, 5 1/16 really, just a little bit over 5 inches. And the closed profile, it's a pretty big boy. We're looking at 1.5 inches. I said it was thick through the handle, and I meant it. It is well over 1/2 inch. Let's find out exactly how far over 1/2 inch. Yeah. Right, 0.69. So we're coming up on 3/4 of an inch. I mean, it's a thick handle. God, is it comfortable. The action is very good. Now, I have used this a bunch, but I haven't taken it apart and haven't done any maintenance on it. So it is as it is. I didn't even lubricate it, and it snaps right out of there with authority. I love that the blade itself is this kind of cool stonewash, and they even stonewashed out the clip, which is a nice touch. And it rides the pocket surprisingly well for a thick knife. Sitivien is doing good things for not a lot of money, and that makes me very, very happy. Now, it does have a fairly noticeable flipper tab, as you can see, and no lanyard space. Sorry, lanyard fans. Even the liners, by the way, are blackwashed, which is a really nice touch. But yeah, so the flipper tab is pretty noticeable, right? It's not subtle in any way, but it's not sharp. So riding the pocket as this does, particularly with this shape, it does sort of tend to stay out of the way. But I wouldn't want to have this up against the screen on my phone, for instance. But it's a big enough knife that for most people, you may not be able to get a phone in your pocket along with this. Let's do some size comparisons. What should we do? Well, here's something that is fun. This is the Riot-made Liangma Warrior, the Warrior 2, in fact. As you can see, the Sitivien is longer, right, with a little more cutting. Of course, this is a whole different set of materials. Now let's use some knives you've probably seen before. Here it is against the PM2, which is considerably smaller than the ST-116 here. I wish they gave their knives names. The ST-116 doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, but that's okay. Here it is against the Bug Out. Another knife that you are probably familiar with or have at least seen. Here it is against the SOG Terminus XR LTE. I just landed this. This is all carbon fiber in S35VN. As you can see, the ST-116 is much bigger than the Terminus. And for our long, not necessarily big, but nice long knife, here it is against the Andella, which is a good size knife. And you can see the Andella is just about identical in length, right? Of course, it is much narrower. You know, I'm never going to give stuff like this up. I'm not. You know, I've got expensive tools. You know, I really do. I've got, my collection has got a wide variety of knives and a wide variety of materials. You know, I've got stuff like the XM18, which is a $425 knife. And then I've got stuff like the the Sencut here. This is the Sencut episode. There's a review of this coming, which is a $40 knife. You know, every price range, you know, every sort of material, they all interest me. And the reason that stuff like this continues to interest me is because when somebody says, hey, what's a good knife that I can buy and use that's cool looking, that functions really well, I don't have to be one of those guys that, you know what you need to do? You need to spend $400 on a Hinderer or on a Chris Reeve. No, I mean, yeah, if you want to, go ahead. But if you don't want to, you can spend less than $30 on Amazon and get yourself a Sitivien in D2, you know, that's going to absolutely work for you. And I think that is just awesome. I really do. Now, the ST-116 here is a big knife, so it isn't light. Let's go ahead and weigh it out. See where we land. It's balanced. It really is well balanced. And so even though I don't think it's going to be a lightweight, let me take a look in here and see if they've milled out these liners before we weigh it. And they have not. I don't know if that's going to show up. Look at that. Can you see that? There is no milling on these reasonably thick liners. This, I'm guessing, is their version of a hard use, or at least harder use, tool. And because of that, they have not done any weight reduction except this giant hole in the blade. And of course, D2 is an excellent harder use blade steel, right? All right, so enough of that jibber jabber. Let's see where we weigh in at. Yeah, 6.2 ounces. This is a big boy. By way of comparison, the full-size Presidio 2 from Benchmade is 5 ounces. So this is an ounce heavier. Where do these things compare size-wise? Again, let's see where we fall out here. These knives are very, very similar in size and dimension. Very similar in cutting area, too. But you could get 6 of these for the price of this, or 7 maybe. You know, I mean, this is the, you know, $180 work knife that I recommend to anybody who's asking. If you have a working career where you need a reliable knife, I recommend the Presidio 2 all the time. But again, people have a hard time dropping this kind of money, even on a knife they're going to have for a while. So now, I got to tell you, if somebody is looking for a big, well-built, comfortable knife that costs about the same as, you know, a decent lunch out, the ST-116 here is absolutely going to be on that list. This is a fantastic pocket knife. Interesting, well-sorted, good cutter, good carry. It's just a great knife. Let's go ahead and see how much of that D2 they give you. Back here at the thickest point, it is 158 thousandths, or just over 4 millimeters. It could be a slicier blade if they didn't have this big flat that they cut out for the hole here. If they'd have let this be a high flat blade, this thing would have been an absolute razor blade. And again, it really is kind of a thick edge. But for a working tool where you're going to be cutting mostly stuff like strapping or rope or plastic, that's okay. And it does hold a nice edge. There is a plunge right here, and there is a sharpening choil just at the base of the plunge. It does thicken out a little bit back here. They could have done a slightly better job sharpening it, but hey, I'm not going to nitpick a $26 knife. I'm just not. So there we have it. This is the Sitivien ST-116. It is the biggest of the Sitivien knives that I have seen so far, and I think it's probably my favorite. Interesting, again, in design, comfortable in hand, durable looking and feeling, cuts well for what it is. It's just a great knife, and I hope you've enjoyed this look at it. Thank you so much for watching. This has been, again, and also, again, the Sitivien ST-116 and D2 and G10. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.